This is Orange Nation Overtime with Steve Infanti and Paulie Scibilia.
Welcome in Orange Nation Overtime, everyone. Alongside Paulie Scibilia, I'm Steve Infanti. We have made it to Thursday here, and we talked quite a bit early on in the show today about the new game day experience inside the Dome. Recently, Syracuse University announced all the changes coming to the quad. We talked about that with different food options and rock climbing and
bull riding,
live music, and a lot of stuff going on the quad. And then now inside the Dome during the game, there's been some changes as well, including the third down music that will be played.
Yeah, they've gone more of a Gen Z, Gen X, millennial type music where they'll play DMX.
That's right. Rough Riders anthem will pop on the loudspeaker during big third downs. There's going to be an upgraded team entrance. They said that they're going to keep under wraps until the opener against New Hampshire. They want all fans in the seats for when the team runs out on the field. Third quarters will be dedicated to the students.
This is the most important one, I think, is keeping the students involved.
Yes. So there's going to be some student-focused entertainment. They're going to create specific giveaways and competitions involving students and faculty and staff during the third quarter. They're going to have special pricing for the concession stands right behind the student section. $2 hot dogs, $2 popcorn, $2 beverages. Again, how many times have we seen game goes to half? Even if the game's close, a lot of students up and leave. They're getting on with their day or getting on with their night, depending on when the game is. They want to keep the students invested and there and loud and part of the environment.
Yeah, that is important.
I agree. We had Dalton Wasserman on our show today. He's the co-host of the Preferred Walk-On College Football Show, along with Max Chadwick, who we've had on the show quite often as well. And we led off Dalton by asking for his thoughts on Syracuse and his expectations for Fran Brown heading into year 3.
I don't expect them to win 10 games again like they did a couple years ago with Kyle McCord and that crew. There was a lot of NFL talent on that team, but I think there is still something to work with here. The secondary on the defensive side is really good, and Angeli on the offensive side at quarterback, he proved last year through 4 games he can be their guy. He's fundamentally sound. He really started to get in a groove, especially in that Clemson win before he got hurt. If you have a healthy Angeli and a solid quarterback situation for the entirety of the season, I think they can get back to a bowl game, but it's really going to depend on what he looks like. I do like the backup that they brought in, or the presumed backup, at least in Amari Odom from Kennesaw State. Different type of quarterback than Angeli, but he just won Conference USA with the Owls last year. So it should be a better quarterback situation than it was the last 2/3 of the season last year. But we need to see somebody produce at that position in order for the Orange to get back to a bowl game.
I was going to ask you about strengths and weaknesses. Do you look at the quarterback position as a strength going into 2026 after it was very much a weakness in 2025?
I actually do. I mean, between the starter, if Angeli is healthy, obviously we saw what he could do the first 4 games. And then the depth, right? I mean, that was the big problem, is that once Angeli got hurt, obviously Ricky Collins and Joe Filardi, they couldn't really get the job done at all. It couldn't even be a functional offense. They were one of the worst offenses, maybe the worst in the Power 4 after Angeli got hurt. Even if Angeli isn't right, or if he were to re-injure something, Amari Odom is a reliable starter who can create explosive plays with both his arm and his legs. So the fact that they went and got a reliable backup like that, if Angeli is not healthy for any reason, it is a lot better. I think it is now a strength of this team. And honestly, if Angeli's healthy, maybe the best part of this offense.
In terms of other strengths on this roster, I mean, we go to the defensive backfield. You look at Chris Peel, you look at Demetrius Samuel, maybe the best cornerback duo in the conference, maybe. What other strengths do you see on this roster? What else do you like about it?
Yeah, I don't mind the linebacker room either. I think the back 7 is really the strength of this Syracuse team. You look at the linebacker core, some experienced guys back there, and then you mentioned it, the corners are definitely the headline of this defense, right? Between Peel and Samuel, and Chris Peel, a guy getting top 100 NFL draft talk, Demetrius Samuel with a solid freshman year last year. So I think when you really just look at the whole back 7, it's a defense that's built from the back end forward. I have my concerns on the defensive line and where they're going to get their pass rush from, but I think that back 7 can definitely keep them in games.
All right, so let's go there next with the concerns. And, we keep coming back to up front on both sides of the ball. Is that your biggest concern as well, what they do in the trenches?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, when you look at the offensive skill positions, I think there definitely are some question marks also, but they brought in a lot of transfers and guys that they think can at least produce right away. I think when you look at the Syracuse offensive and defensive lines, that's going to be the big questions, especially when you talk about playing against some of the better teams in the ACC. The best teams in the ACC are good in the trenches, right? Miami, SMU, Louisville, right? Teams like that want to win down low on the offensive and defensive lines, and that's really where Syracuse has their biggest question marks. I believe they lost their 3 best offensive linemen this offseason. The defensive line is really a lot of question marks, a lot of guys with not a lot of previous production. So that's really what you look at. I think in certain matchups, it's going to be, are they going to be able to block people, and are they going to be able to hold up at the defensive line on the first level?
Dalton, we've had a few national guests on over the course of the last several weeks, and we've asked them about Steve Angeli, and I'm going to ask you the same question in terms of where does he rank for you in the pecking order of best quarterbacks in the ACC. And we've had several people say, 5th or 6th or, somewhere in that tier. Yet we're seeing all these preseason watch lists come out, and there's 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks from the ACC on these watch lists. Steve Angeli is not mentioned. Is that simply because, he only played 3.5 games last year, or do you think he falls outside of that top group of 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the league?
I think you do have some more talented guys physically than Angeli, right? I think about Darian Mensah from Miami. I think about Jaron Chiave-Songapolatelli from Cal. You think about CJ Bailey at NC State, Kevin Jennings at SMU. I don't think he's in maybe the top 5 necessarily. The way he was playing last year obviously could put him in that category if he put a whole year together like that. But I think it's closer to middle of the pack. There's not a ton of depth at quarterback in the ACC. There's a lot of teams with some unproven guys or guys who haven't been starters before. I think about Louisville. I think about Georgia Tech. They have major questions at quarterback, at least going into the season. So I think Angeli's experience and the fact that we've seen him play functional football as a starter, even just for a little bit, I think puts him in the middle of the pack. If I counted it up, it's probably somewhere around 8th or 9th, maybe somewhere in there out of the 17th. There's some guys at the bottom I really don't trust, but I think he's solid. And I think if he proves he can do it for a whole season, he could produce like a top 5 or 6 guy.
All right, the most important Syracuse question, and my last Syracuse question before we move on to bigger and better things here. Over-under has been set at 4.5. Do they go over that? And I'm going to take it one step further. Do they get to 6, which is what everybody around here wants to see? 6 wins, get back to the postseason.
It's a tough schedule. This is the problem, too, is they've got a lot of tough games on their schedule. Notre Dame, again, a home game against Cal. I think they're going to be really good again. I think they're going to be possibly even better than they were last year. At Pitt, at Virginia, Louisville. Miami's not on the schedule, which is good. I'm for now going to say under 4.5. I think this is tough because you could get over that line, but I like them better than BC. At UConn, it was a tricky game last year, so I'm not going to just drop it in the bucket as a win. Carolina might be about even. I'm going to say under for now. I think there's a lot of tough games on there. There's certainly a chance they could get to probably 6-6, but there's a few games here. At Virginia's really tough. Notre Dame is tough. Louisville's going to be very good, especially if you have trench issues. So I'm going to go under that 4.5. I think I had them officially predicted at 4 and 8.
Yeah, the schedule is tricky, and we talked about it that they, I guess they benefit, quote unquote, getting Louisville, SMU, Clemson at home, but that means that all the toss-up games are on the road. So, to your point, if it could go sideways, there's no doubt about that. All right, let's move on to the rest of the ACC. Everybody's picking Miami. In your mind, who is Miami's biggest threat in the ACC? Is it SMU? Is it Louisville? Do you like somebody else?
I think at the end of the day, and it's funny because this game is so earlier in the year, it's probably the winner of the game SMU at Louisville in week 3. I think those two teams are on very equal footing, and whoever wins that game is going to have more of an inside track to the ACC title game. And, I think Miami's going to have to get over the hump either way, right? You talk about those are the two teams that beat Miami in the regular season last year, and they got out coached. Mario Cristobal kind of has to avoid that, that yearly thing that he has where it's like this 1 or 2 regular season games where probably shouldn't lose, but they kind of found a way to lose. So I think those two are about on equal ground. And if I was throwing a dark horse in there, I really like what Cal has going on offense too. Jaron Chiave-Songapolatelli at quarterback, the true sophomore. He is going to be a superstar. He might be the number 1 overall pick in the 2028 NFL draft. They really loaded up in the transfer portal. If they've got enough on defense, I think they're really a dark horse here.
All right, you gave us a sleeper in the conference. How about a sleeper in the college football playoff format or in the national championship race? We saw Indiana kind of come out of nowhere and surprise everybody a year ago. Do you have a sleeper this year that you think might make a run nationally?
So I think as far as the national title, that's a tougher one because I think there's 7 legitimate contenders, and then maybe even a couple more like an LSU or an Oklahoma you could convince yourself of. The playoff race is more interesting because I think with especially the way the Big 12 and the ACC are structured, you've got one heavy favorite in each conference in Miami and Texas Tech, and then you've got a really wide open race for second place. I mentioned Cal and the ACC as one. I think Oklahoma State, they have a ton of talent with all those guys coming with Eric Morris in from North Texas, Drew Mestemaker at quarterback, Caleb Hawkins at running back, Wyatt Young at wide receiver. They've got some serious offensive firepower, and I think they're structured kind of the same way as Cal, where if their offense is great and their defense ends up being average, they can sneak their way into a Big 12 title game, and once you get there, you're playing one football game for that right to be in the playoffs. So I think Oklahoma State is a very real sleeper in the Big 12 with all the talent they have. I think they're the most improved roster in the country.
How about a Heisman pick this year? Who do you like?
Oh, man, we're doing our you're getting it a little early because we're doing our official award predictions later today. Meet myself and Max Chadwick on our show. But I'm going to go with my guy. I'm going to go with Julian Sayin from Ohio State. He had such a good year last year, 3rd in the Heisman race last year. If he would have won the Indiana game, he would have won the Heisman Trophy already over Fernando Mendoza. He's so good. I know the NFL draft scouts are down on him. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's the most accurate QB in the country. He's got a loaded receiving core headlined by the best football player in the country in Jeremiah Smith, and I think he's going to be even better this year. Julian Sayin, to me, is an outstanding football player. Underrate him if you want in the NFL draft circles. That's a different conversation, but as a college quarterback, he's unbelievable, and Ohio State's in for another big year.
I appreciate you giving us a sneak peek of your predictions. I'm going to ask you for one more prediction. That's a national championship prediction. Who do you got meeting in the title game, and who do you got winning?
I'll be honest. I just finalized this about 15 minutes ago, so you guys are in for a treat here. My final 2 I have standing. I have the Big Ten dominance continuing for a 4th straight year. I've got Ohio State and Oregon squaring off in the national title game, and I'm picking Ohio State over Oregon to win their 2nd title in 3 years, led by Sayin and Jeremiah Smith.
All right. And then last one, you mentioned college football gets underway this weekend, and it does. North Carolina, TCU. I see the line keeps going up. TCU opened as about a touchdown favorite. It's creeping up to almost 10 points now out there in Dublin. Do you have a strong feeling, strong lean with the TCU North Carolina game? Yeah,
I like TCU a lot in this game. I think they're just a better football team, and Carolina's been surrounded by so much turmoil this offseason, and even now it sounds like they're not going to have their defensive coordinator, Steve Belichick, for this game. So I don't know who's calling defensive plays for North Carolina, and that's their stronger side of the ball. And offensively, I just don't know how quickly Bobby Petrino can fix an offense that's basically running with spare parts, right? Billy Edwards Jr. at quarterback, new starters at running back, and a lot of new starters on the offensive line. I just think TCU is better. This is a solid 9-win football team. Sonny Dykes is running a really good program there, and the X factor is going to be Jaden Craig, the transfer quarterback from Harvard. But I actually have TCU in my official prediction winning by 17. I like them comfortably in this game.
So Dalton says under 4.5 for the win-loss total. I think they're going over. I tend to think they're going to find a way to get to 6. I know it's going to be tough given the schedule, but that's where I sit. I believe in Fran Brown. Steve Angeli's back. I believe in Jeff Nixon in that offense, and I think the defense is going to be much improved. I think they find a way to get to 6.
Yeah, I'm more leaning that way the more I talk to people. And hear people, experts, unlike myself, and I'm starting to lean that way, but I'm still at 5. If you make a prediction, you got to stand by it, Steve.
All right.
I'm a man of my word.
We talked about fantasy football as well. A lot of people have their fantasy football drafts this week. We've got ours at Channel 9 coming up on Sunday. And so we had Brian Drake on, fantasy football host and writer for SiriusXM and Fantasy Points. And we led him off asking about how much he pays attention to the preseason. How much can guys rise or fall in your rankings during the preseason? Here's what he had to say on that.
the preseason doesn't really mean as much anymore. Coaches really take more stock in the joint practices, and that's where they see ones against ones, good versus good on these two teams. The games are almost meaningless. They're kind of just for the depth players. But I tell you, I can give you a little New York flavor here. The player I think that's risen up the draft boards the most with his health and his showing in camp is Malik Neighbors of the New York Giants. This was a guy who, with his injury, was going in like the 4th round of some drafts, the best ball drafts going on over the winter and the early spring. And now you see him, and I said it right when he came back from injury, I go, he's going to be a 1-2 turn pick by Labor Day. And, if we look at our rankings over at fantasypoints.com, Malik Neighbors is somebody that is already a wide receiver 12 on our board. So he's scooting right up there. And it wouldn't shock me at all when you guys go to your fantasy drafts if someone pulls the trigger on Malik Neighbors in the 2nd round.
Can I ask you about the Raiders backfield?
Sure.
There's a local product by the name of Mike Washington Jr., went to CNS here locally, who is, the backup there. And we saw what happened with Ashton Genty, went down with an injury. It sounds like the team is saying that he avoided serious injury, that it's just an ankle sprain, but his status is up in the air for the opener. What do you make of that backfield there? And is there value in picking Mike Washington, A, knowing that Genty is hurt now, but also B, knowing that, he was splitting some time with the first team reps during camp and whatnot? What do you make of the backfield situation there?
As a proud Henniger Black Knight alumni, it pains me to root for a CNS North Star. But, Mike Williams is going to have a chance. I don't trust anything about what the Raiders are doing. They're being so coy with this Genty injury. If it was truly a low ankle sprain, they'd come and say, oh yeah, he's fine. It's a low ankle sprain. It's no big deal. And you see him bopping around practice and all that. They talked about him going down. He was trying to catch a ball. No one touched him. Initially, it was a knee. Then we talk ankle. If you have a high ankle sprain and a severe high ankle sprain, those are death sentences for skill position players. I don't care what you read on the internet. I remember Alvin Kamara talked about that, and he said, I wasn't right for a year. And a lot of times guys have to have surgery after the year on some of those high ankle sprains. So if someone is a high ankle, I'm done. I'm out. I want nothing to do with them. If it is just a generic low ankle sprain, and let's say that Genty will be back, I don't know, he's going to miss 2 weeks. Yeah, there's absolute value in drafting Mike Washington. You just have to know where to take him. You're not going to take him in the 6th round of your draft, right. But there's a point where with this improved offensive line in Vegas, if you can get him in, I don't know, the 9th, 10th round, he's going to start for you for, let's say, 2 weeks. There's real value in that. If he's your RB2, if he's your flex, because he's getting the majority of touches. All we want in fantasy football is opportunity. If you're going to get the ball, if you're going to see touches, goal line work, 3rd down, we're in. And Mike Washington's going to have a great opportunity for that. So, yeah, I would be eyeing him up. And also, guys, we don't know how long this injury is going to last. He could re-aggravate this the first day he's back, and then all of a sudden he's out for 2 months, and Mike Washington's a league winner. So I would be targeting him. It's just a matter of don't jump the gun too early.
In terms of, I guess let's start at the top of the draft with the guys that we would normally expect to go in the 1st round. Is there a player or two among that group that you would maybe shy away from, think he's going to maybe have a little bit of a down season by his standards? Not saying he's undraftable, but maybe you wouldn't take him with your 1st overall pick, wherever that falls in the 1st round.
There's a couple of guys that I can just rattle off. Justin Jefferson being one. This was a guy, 2-3 years ago was the 101 in a ton of fantasy drafts. And now last year we saw him with poor quarterback play and he suffered. And this year again, he's going to have interesting quarterback play with Kyler Murray at the helm. So Justin Jefferson's not somebody I really want to stake my fantasy season to. And moreover, Devon Achane in Miami. Now, last year, he was a top 5 running back, and we know how explosive he can be, but a lot of that came in the passing game. Now he's playing with Malik Willis, who, by the way, you should always draft at the end of your drafts because of the upside there is so great, because he runs. And the fact that Malik Willis runs is bad news for Devon Achane, because that means he's not going to be doing these dump-offs out of the backfield like Tua Tagovailoa was, and he's going to steal touches around the goal line. So I don't want a guy who's not going to catch as many passes, who's on a horrific team that may only win one game all season. And Devon Achane's a slight guy. He looks like me out there. Like, maybe not just me, but he's a smaller guy. He wasn't big when he came out of A&M. So I don't trust him to take the pounding that I think this terrible Dolphins team is going to want to put on him, because they have nothing else at their skill positions.
How high would you go to a tight end position? If you can get one of the elite guys like a Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, do you see value in doing that relatively early, because there is a drop off at that position after you get outside the top, whatever it is, 3, 4, 5 guys? Or do you tend to stick with running backs and wide receivers, early in the draft, and you'll get around to your tight end later?
There is real upside and value. If you select, let's say, Brock Bowers, his ADP, average draft position right now, is 14 overall. So second pick of the second round. If you take him there and he hits and has a season where he averages 20 plus points a game, you've got a real advantage over your room. The problem being is if he doesn't, and he only has an average or slightly above average season at tight end, now you're behind the 8 ball, because in that position, early second round, you could have taken a Chase Brown, a Derrick Henry, an A.J. Brown, a Nico Collins, Ken Walker, some of these guys that it's harder to find difference makers at that level, off the waiver wire. Like, you can always kind of find a tight end who will get you a few points. If you want 10 points a week, I think the stat is over the last 6 years, there has always been at least one tight end drafted round 10 or later who has finished as a top 5 tight end. Last year was Harold Fannin Jr. And Brock Bowers, could he be great? Sure, but you're betting on an outlier season, just like Trey McBride had. So I don't like to bet on outliers. That's not a safe bet. I just would rather probably wait a few rounds, get my hands on a Tucker Kraft. Even in the 4th round, if you want to pull the trigger that early on Colston Loveland, I think he's going to be the central figure in the Bears pass game, or wait a ton later and get your hands on the Giants prospect, Isaiah Likely, who I think could be the second in targets there on the New York Giants.
I was mentioning before you came out, Brian, that we've got our fantasy football draft this weekend, 12-team league. I'm picking 12th. So, when you do those snake drafts, you get the double pick, but then it's a while before it comes back to you. So I'm going to have to wait on a position, right? I can't have everybody with those first 2 picks. Is it safest to wait on wide receiver, given the fact that it seems like a deeper position? Or I guess, how would you handle that from a strategic standpoint?
Well, I'm someone who, my wife could tell you this. I'm very kind of risk averse here, and you want to have some balance. Now, at the 12, could you go? I mean, we'll see who falls to you, but let's say there's a James Cook there, and Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty may even be there. I probably would wait on that, though. And you could get 2 really good running backs, because, Steve, we know running backs are the lifeblood of fantasy football. Everyone wants to be in the running back business early. So I wouldn't fault you for going running back. Say you even get Barkley and Omarion Hampton. When it comes back to you, you're going to be looking at who your wide receiver 1 could potentially be. Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, Ladd McConkey, these type of guys. And you just take a pair of them there. Or would you rather say, give me one of each? Give me Saquon Barkley at 12, and then I'll take A.J. Brown or Nico Collins, one of these guys. So now you've got a really good guy who could be a top 7 option at the position. Then when it comes back in the next round, kind of just boom, boom, 1 and 1 again. You're building a better floor. But again, in fantasy football, it's all about upside. You pick players you think are going to win you the league.
Yeah. Good advice there. I know everybody, I'm sure, asks you about sleeper picks. Everybody wants to hit on that sleeper, right?
Peyton Hillis.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Do you have a couple of guys in mind that you're targeting, you're looking at saying, you know what, this is going to be my secret weapon this year. I'm going to pick this guy in, round 11 or whatever, and he's going to help me to a championship.
Yeah, and I was just doing an interview with Nathan Zagura, who's the Cleveland Browns color commentator, and he talked up Casey Concepcion, who is wide receiver 49. He's going 100-plus picks into a draft. Nathan told me straight up, he goes, he's going to lead the Browns in receiving. They drafted him this year fairly high. I believe he was a first-round pick of the Browns this year. This is a bad team. This is a team that their defense isn't going to be as good. They don't have Myles Garrett anymore. Their quarterback situation, it'll look like Syracuse if Steve Angeli goes down again. It's that dire. But if they're going to throw the ball a lot and Concepcion is their alpha, that's a great guy to take, 9th, 10th round in your draft. And another name to consider at the wide receiver position, DeJon Stribling. He was the second pick of the second round in the NFL draft for the San Francisco 49ers. Actually, it might have been the first pick of the second round. And everybody on that team is either old, hurt, or old and hurt right now. And Stribling is a guy who can play in the slot. He can play outside. Brock Purdy, perennially underrated. So I love DeJon Stribling because I'm not placing a bet that Mike Evans is going to stay healthy for 17 games, or Christian McCaffrey, or George Kittle, or anyone else on that team.
Any coordinator changes in the league that you think changed things from a fantasy perspective that you're keeping your eye on? We talked a little bit earlier about scheme and fit and whether it's a head coach or like an OC. Are there any situations that you've got your eye on?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many coordinator changes this year, and just one that sticks out to me, not only because it's a team I follow closely, but it is going to have an impact on fantasy football, is the Philadelphia Eagles. And Sean Mannion, who just a few years ago was a backup quarterback in the league, is now calling the plays for the Birds. And what you're going to see in Philadelphia is not this shotgun RPO offense that they used to run, where Jalen Hurts is just back in the pocket and it's a very stagnant offense. No one moves. You're going to see Jalen Hurts under center. You're going to see a lot more outside zone runs for Saquon Barkley, which I'll be honest, he wasn't great at in years past. And you're also going to see a lot more motion and throws over the middle of the field, something Hurts hasn't done a ton of. So if the Eagles can take to that offense and throw the ball over the middle of the field, I think Hurts can have a huge season. Dallas Goedert is very underrated. And Devontae Smith has the chance to elevate himself into that upper echelon of wide receiver. He's a guy who did win the Heisman Trophy. He's a really, really good player. He was just behind an alpha in A.J. Brown. And I think this year you're going to see Devontae Smith take that next step and become one of those guys you talk about as one of the top 15 wide receivers in the NFL.
I do think Mike Washington Jr. is an interesting pick there with the Raiders, given the injury to Ashton Genty. And as Brian said, the Raiders have been very quiet about what that injury actually is. And you look at what Washington has done during the preseason. He's averaging about 8 yards per carry. And I know it's just the preseason, but he's got the ability to catch it out of the backfield. He was already taking some first-team reps even when Genty was healthy. So keep your eye on the former CNS star this year as a rookie with Las Vegas as somebody who may surprise some people.
I don't know why I've never gotten into fantasy sports. Like I grew up, I played Stratomatic. I love doing the 82-0, the 162-0. There's just something about me having to do it be focused and pay attention to what I'm doing. I can't do it.
So you're lazy, is what you're saying.
No, it's not that I'm lazy. No, you're right in a way, but I also it's too time consuming. It's like I got real problems to worry about during the week, and I don't want to have to update my roster.
It is time consuming. I will say this, and I stopped playing fantasy baseball for that reason, because there's so many games, and we went to a league where we did it where you set your lineup at the beginning of the week, and then we changed the rules, and then it was every day, and it got to be too much for me, especially over the summer. I was trying, family time over the summer, and it got to be too much, and so I backed away from fantasy baseball. I do like fantasy football in that it is, the games are later in the week, and I do think it helps with my job. It helps me stay focused on, knowing the players, knowing the teams, knowing what's going on. I'm a little bit more in tune to it.
Like with the first game on Thursdays now, I have to know by Wednesday what I got to do, and then I got the coaches show on Thursday, and I got to worry about that.
Yeah,
and,
I get
too
it.
much going on.
I get it. You're busy. Vast responsibilities.
Yes.
We missed you yesterday. What national days? Besides my half-birthday.
So today after the show, if I just come up and punch you in the stomach, it's because it's National Just Because Day.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you can't be mad at me if I just punch you in the gut.
With all due respect. And then
hey, it's National Just Because Day. Poof. And then National Peach Day.
Okay.
And finally, National Pots de Creme Day. I don't know what that is. It looks like a chocolate souffle of some sort. Delicious custard dessert. Collect your ramekins and you make it in a ramekin. How is custard not a texture you like?
I don't like custard. Yeah,
even if it's chocolate.
It's better if it's chocolate, but if it's white and creamy, no.
Yeah, brown and creamy. Okay, all right, there you go. So that's what it was.
Okay, we are out of time. It's good to have you back. We missed you yesterday on the show. For Paulie, I'm Steve. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Happy half birthday, Steve.
Thank you, Paulie. I appreciate it. Syracuse football is back, and so is Orange Nation. Join us as we preview Fran Brown's third year at the helm as he and the Orange look to bounce back from last season. Orange Nation, August 31st at 7 on News Channel 9 and WSYR+.